As we move towards the end of the term of this council and all seek resolution and re-election, we give thanks for the work that has been achieved on behalf of the wards, the residents of the borough, for the wise stewardship that has been encountered by all in consensus after debate and dialogue. We pray for those who will stand for re-election, that they may have a spirit of service, of humility, of integrity, with an attentive mind, a listening ear, and a voice that speaks for the best. So we offer this agenda tonight as we look forward for what the borough needs in the future, not only to maintain what is good, but have a vision and an understanding for the future, so that in debate this evening there may be peace and concord, there may be harmony, and there may be wise speech and dialogue. So, great God of wisdom, come before us and give us that insight, that integrity, that decisiveness, and that consensus that is needed, without the emotion, without the passion, but with the full facts before us. So deliver us from this and protect us through the coming night, our friends, our colleagues, and our families, for Christ's sake. Amen.
To advise you that if the fire alarm sounds, please remain seated, and members of the Democratic Services team will assess the situation and give further instructions on the evacuation of the building. These proceedings will be webcast and recorded by the council, but will anyone else be recording or filming them? No, I simply ask to let people know if this will be happening. No, okay. Finally, I appreciate that the matters to be discussed this evening are sensitive, but I would like to remind you of the standards of conduct needed to ensure respect for everyone present, and for there to be an environment conducive for the open presentation of views, debate with courtesy to all, and to enable a decision to be made. Thank you. Apologies for absence. I've received apologies for absence from Councillors Bryant and Kadka. Are there any other? No. Apologies. Are there any applications for dispensations? Thank you. Are there any disclosures by members? Nope. One, we have.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to disclose that I am the ex-chairman and founder member of the Against Lidsing group, but I come here, I'm not predetermined.
Thank you very much.
Could you ask her, I couldn't quite catch the last bit, can you ask her if she's coming with an open mind, please?
Have you come,
Yes, I have.
Thank you very much. Are there any disclosures by officers? None. I didn't see Somebody raise their hand to a point of order. Sorry? Okay. Right. So are there disclosures by members? Okay.
I'll say I've got about 50 emails on it. I don't know about everyone else.
Ask if anybody has not been lobbied.
Yeah. Are there any of those haven't been lobbied? No. So everybody has. Are there any disclosures by officers?
No, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Are there any disclosures of lobbying? Done that one. Please allow time. Okay. Is it agreed that,
Can you ask people just to be quiet?
could you just please be a bit quiet because I've got a, that's it, thank you. I'll need to sit closer to this. Right, is it agreed that items on the agenda be taken in public as proposed? Very good. There are no petitions this evening. We're into question. No, wait, no. Yes, we are. Into question and answer session for local residents. I've received notification that Councillor Peter Cooling, Chairman of Teeston Parish Council, wishes to ask a member of the Cabinet Member for Planning, Infrastructure and Economic Development.
Thank you very much. Shall I proceed? I am Chairman, Teeston Parish Council. We are on the border with Tunbridge and Malling, which currently is enduring the NPPF enforced adverse impact of not having a valid local plan. That is, presumption in favour of sustainable development. Do you believe that members are sufficiently briefed on that worrying impact? Should our borough cease to have a valid local plan when considering future applications from developers, including applications for major developments in unwelcome locations? Thank you.
Thank you. Could Councillor Cooper respond to that, please?
Mr. Mayor, thank you very much. And I would say to Councillor Cooling, yes. I do share the same fundamental concerns that Councillor Cooling has raised in his questions. And this has been an ongoing process over several years. I believe that sufficient information has been provided and understood by all members in this chamber about the dangers of being without adequate planning policies and indeed without a local plan in place. Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Cooling, do you wish to ask a supplementary question of the Cabinet Member for Planning, Infrastructure and Economic Development arising out of the original question or the reply?
If I may, thank you. That answer is pretty reassuring. My question is, does that mean that you will be recommending to all members here this evening that, despite no doubt some personal reservations, that it is strongly in the overall interests of this borough that this local plan review should be adopted? Thank you.
Once again, thank you very much, Mr. Mayor, and I thank Councillor Cooling for his supplementary question. I certainly will be recommending that all councillors adopt the local plan this evening. I am concerned that our adopted local plan is now over 5 years old and largely out of date. There would be an immediate increase in housing targets from the 1,000 homes per annum, which is contained in the step trajectory for the first 5 years, to 1,226 per annum if we don't adopt a plan. We would fail to comply with our statutory duty to have a local plan in place, and that opens up consequences of potential intervention by the Secretary of State. We would have the inability to continue with proposed planning documents, which we hope to put in place. We would have difficulties providing much needed infrastructure, as we won't have the requirements set out in local plan policies. There will be a lack of certainty for all residents, businesses and investors in the borough, not to mention the financial challenges presented to the council. There are a number of other robust reasons why I believe we should be putting a plan in place this evening, which I'm pretty confident will be covered at some point during the debate. Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you very much, Councillor Cooper. I've received notification that Councillor Bryant wishes to ask a question of the Cabinet Member for Planning, Infrastructure and Economic Development. Councillor Bryant is unable to be with us this evening, and I have agreed to ask the question on her behalf. A written version. Councillor Bryant's question. A written version of. Are we on the right section? Yeah, there we go. A written version of the answer will be sent to Councillor Bryant.
Okay, so this is the question. Do you want to read it?
Yes, please.
So
Yeah.
that bit there.
Okay. If the local plan goes through, can Councillor Cooper please commit to working with me and the Boxley Parish Council even more closely in the future to understand our residents' concerns and create the best possible outcome relating to that infrastructure, and to mitigate against the significant disruption that could affect our residents in the affected areas of Boxley Ward?
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. And once again, I would say to Councillor Bryant, yes, there is a local plan policy for community engagement. And within the local plan, there is a requirement for supplementary planning documents for that specific development at Lidsing. That includes the formation of a governance group, that of which is anticipated to include ward members, parish councils and other interested parties. I'm also pleased to see positive engagement from the new leadership at Medway Council, which I feel will be an asset going forwards with this development. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I received notification that Councillor Tom Sams wishes to ask a question of the Cabinet Member for Planning, Infrastructure and Economic Development.
Thank you. Before I start, can I ask particularly, sorry, it's no disrespect, Councillor Cooper, but the acoustics, and I know there's lots of people here, is really bad. And sorry, because you're a tall chap, we can't hear you properly. Thank you. We are here this evening to come to a decision on our local plan. This extraordinary meeting is called prior to the elections and just before Purdah. This meeting makes it difficult for Parish Council to respond and is seen by many to be rushed. How would you answer those who say that you and this council are putting this forward at this time of politically expedient reasons?
Thank you.
Once again, thank you very much. And I would say to Councillor Sams, there has been ongoing communication from me and from the strategic planning team. Written communications. The local plan has been discussed at pretty much every single meeting of the Planning, Infrastructure and Economic Development Policy Advisory Committee. So I would like to think that members were well aware of the requirements before us and the timeframes which we're anticipating. I think it is entirely appropriate that we are discussing the local plan this evening, and it is within the usual timeframes of this council, not to mention the requirement for us to attempt to adopt a local plan as soon as is reasonably practical after receipt of the inspector's final letter. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Councillor Sams, do you wish to ask a supplementary question of the Cabinet Member for Planning and Infrastructure and Economic Development arising out of your original question or the reply?
Mr. Mayor, because of the nature of this evening and how many speakers there will be, I think Councillor Cooper will be relieved on this occasion. I shan't be asking a supplementary. Thank you.
Thank you. Before I call upon Councillor Cooper to move the recommendations of the Cabinet relating to the Maidstone Borough Local Plan Review 2021-2038 adoption, I would like to draw members' attention to the procedural briefing note that has been circulated. Do you all have that?
So Mr. Mayor has just asked me to explain to you where to find that note. You should have a package that's stapled together. The first page has got the questions, the second, the list of people wishing to make statements or ask make statements, and then thirdly, on the next page, a briefing note which describes the procedure for this evening. Also within that package are some other documents, and these documents were either received by or are the product of last night's Cabinet meeting on the topic of the local plan review. So you should have a stapled set of papers with all that information together. Just looking for some sort of confirmation that I'm not talking rubbish here. Okay, good. Thank you very much.
So everybody's seen that. Okay, thank you. We have two members of the public. Oh, all right. Sorry, I can't. There we go.
Yeah, on the back.
Right, there we are.
So that last paragraph at the bottom.
Yeah. I should also like to draw members' attention to an update in that we have received a letter from KCC, Kent County Council, very late this afternoon. This has been circulated together with a briefing note. Members may wish to take some time to read it. Do you have that? Move on. We'll move on. We have two members of the public and three parish representatives who have registered to address the council. Are they here? Yes, can I call you forward? I can't see. Put your hand up like that's it. I've spotted it. So there you go. Right, 1, 2. Great. So who's first on this? Mr. Healy. There he is. Okay. Do it from that end. Mr. Healy. Oh, right, yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Good evening, councillors. The Sol Group is no stranger to you. We have attended countless meetings and lobbied you all over the last 5 years, setting out why we believe the Heathlands proposal does not work. Some of you have been sympathetic to our cause, some of you haven't. Some of you have visited the village of Lenham, many of you haven't. Some of you have told that you know Heathlands won't work. Many of you, though, are just glad it isn't in your own backyards. I could go through all the failures of Heathlands, including the fact that the council don't have all the land required in their control for the development to even proceed, but I'm not going to replay our arguments because that doesn't seem to resonate. At Cabinet and P&I this week, the Conservative henchmen were deployed to point out that this proposed plan is the one that delivers the housing the borough so desperately needs. The council's most senior officers have instilled fear that this is the only plan in town, that evidence will expire at the stroke of midnight on 30th of March, that developers and their diggers are waiting on the borough boundary to siege upon the borough's green space. The misinformation being peddled that Maidstone won't have a valid local plan if you don't adopt it tonight is simply not true. The current local plan remains in place. We do not lurch to presumption in favour of sustainable development as being widely touted. We do not become a developer's charter. Adopted neighbourhood plans will still protect our parishes. But despite this, a bad plan is better than no plan has become the new Maidstone mantra. Over 100 local planning authorities across the country have now paused or withdrawn their plans. Over half of local planning authorities in the country lack a proven 5-year housing land supply. Other local authorities are not willing to sign themselves up to more and more housing delivery when it is now not a level playing field for all. Maidstone's delivered more new homes in Kent between 2020 and 2022 than Gravesham, Sevenoaks, Tunbridge and Moorlin and Folkestone and Hythe combined. But in their pursuit for such volumes of new homes, MBC have failed to sort out the crumbling infrastructure that so desperately needs to be invested in. It's no wonder Maidstone's residents are saying loud and clear there is too much housing development in this borough and the infrastructure improvements are not keeping up. Other local authorities are listening to their residents and acting accordingly. Maidstone is not. So our ask of you tonight is to listen to your residents rather than being blindly led by the officers. Residents are the ones that elected you to sit here tonight. They will be the ones that hold you to account for tonight's decision at the ballot box on the 2nd of May. We will make sure residents are made aware of which councillors vote to sacrifice the thousands of acres of precious green space need. Thank you.
Thank you. Next one is Mr. Ray Dines.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and councillors. Thank you for allowing me to speak. I'm a resident of Medway, live in Lordswood, and prior to my retirement, I was the head of transportation planning for West Kent. My comments today will be focused on matters of deliverability and viability in relation to the development at Lidsing. Firstly, it should be noted that in the inspector's final report, he initially found the council's main modifications relating to Lidsing to be unsound. The inspector's 11 pages of changes to the main modifications are a valiant attempt to pull together a bundle of undeliverable infrastructure proposals. The reality is there is no approved design for the proposed new link road to M2 Junction 4. The cost estimate for this work, 12 million, is hopelessly inadequate. Demolition of the existing bridge over the M2 and construction of a new bridge diagonally across the original alignment would give rise to huge logistical problems and traffic disruption. The scheme cannot be delivered without third-party land. The suggested interim junction onto Maidstone Road is seriously substandard, and the costs of this work would be totally abortive to the delivery of the ultimate scheme. The proposed east-west link road and bus service via North Dane Way requires land owned by Medway Council, who have for many years repeatedly refused to sell. Medway Council also control land on Hempstead Road, required for improved pedestrian and cycleway provision into Hempstead. The last-minute proposals for M2 Junction 3 have not been subject to safety audit, detailed design, detailed costing or public consultation. There is also complete uncertainty regarding the nature of off-site highway mitigation measures in Bredhurst, Boxley and Medway, and a woeful lack of engagement with local residents in both Maidstone and Medway. The viability assessment of the proposed development at Lidsing is seriously flawed because the infrastructure costs have been blatantly underestimated, and there is no cost allowance for the latest M2 Junction 3 improvements or the undefined Green Bridge over the M2. Most importantly,
thank you, Mr. Dines. His time is up.
Well, I have sent a note to all members, so they should be able to read the rest of it. There is a land cost.
I now call upon the parish representatives. You have 3 minutes each to address the council. Councillor John Britt. There you go.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. For context, Lenham has a neighbourhood plan. It was made in July 2021, and 92% of those who voted supported it. It came out of an agreement from the local plan review of 2017 and will deliver 1,000 homes in the broad location up to 2031. At that time, it was the largest allocation to a rural service centre. We are not NIMBYs. We recognise the need for more housing, but this must be the right sort in the right place. That is not Heathlands. That is not what you have here. During the inspection, we put our concerns to the inspector. Our submissions have been reflected as the so-called Heathlands proposal is still effectively unsound because it requires significant modification as well as unspecified and unconfirmed funds to make it work. What you have in front of you this evening then is a false prospectus with a slender likelihood of eventual delivery. Those of you returning after May's election will have to deal with the fallout of this, and after a few months it won't be the muddle devised by someone else, it will be the new administration's muddle. If you support it because you believe a poor plan is better than no plan at all, you are mistaken. That's an obvious false conclusion, as you do have options, although these do not appear to have been offered to you in any real sense here, and the oft-threatened developers' charter is a scare tactic attempting to raise concerns and needs to be properly challenged. If you support it because you think that's the end of the arguments, again, you're mistaken. The reality is that if you adopt this plan in its present form, you will need to know that having taken specialist legal advice, Lenham Parish will continue to seek leave to challenge its adoption. That is not a threat, that is our right, and we intend to exercise it. There is also a distinct possibility that our challenge will be supported by others. The inspector was clear. He didn't need to see the best plan, he just needed one that on balance might work. I ask you all, is that good enough for Maidstone? Instead of adopting this faulty plan, I suggest the Council agrees to pause and in the interim have proper dialogues with partners such as the parishes, rather than imposing an incomplete plan on everyone. So I would urge everyone here to really think about the consequences of proceeding with this flawed plan and instead opt to pause it, as other councils in this situation have sensibly done. Thank you for listening.
Thank you very much. Thank you. And now Councillor Andrew Lawrence of Bredhurst Parish Council.
Good evening, Mr Mayor, members of the Council. I'm here tonight speaking as a Bredhurst Parish Councillor, but I'm also the Conservative Councillor representing Hempstead and Wigmore on Medway Council, which has a very close border with the proposed garden village at Lidsing. I first want to pay tribute to all the members of the Against Lidsing group who have fought tirelessly to bring some common sense to the Maidstone Barrow Council local plan. As you may know, Bredhurst Parish Council, under the chairmanship of Councillor Jones, has led the fight against the development at Lidsing. Together with my colleague, Councillor Jim Gilbourne, we have worked closely with Vanessa and many residents and landowners who are opposed to the proposals for Lidsing. I've taken a keen interest in the proposals before you tonight. Our residents are extremely concerned at the prospect of 2,000 homes being built on their doorstep, and I urge all members to seriously consider how you vote tonight. Despite the inspector following what could be described as due process and making numerous modifications, the plan before you tonight is not viable and not deliverable. The first sentence of the inspector's report at para 149 states, the Lidsing proposal to a significant degree and function would be regarded as a part of the wider Medway conurbation. There is no signed statement of common ground between our two councils, despite the enormous impact on Medway and its residents of your proposed local plan. Your local plan fails to take into account the land owned by Medway Council that is required for an east-west road and critical to the development. There is no contingency plan should Medway Council refuse to sell the land, which was the unequivocal policy of the previous Conservative administration. The Council believed that protecting the wider land area of Capstan Valley was critical to the good health of residents and to the environment. And to suggest that Ham Lane could provide an alternative route is frankly absurd. The £77 million earmarked for infrastructure at Lidsing is totally inadequate. To remodel Junction 4 of the M2, demolish bridges and build new primary schools, as well as making modifications to M2 at Junction 3. The report states appreciable volumes of traffic are unsatisfactory using the network of lanes and a model shift is needed. We know that the direct route from Maidstone is from Medway Lidsing is through Bredhurst and Boxley, and this will not change. I want to draw your attention to the construction traffic that will be using the roads in Hempstead and Wigmore to access the Lidsing site, and this will bring misery for many years to our residents. I urge all of you to vote against the adoption of your local plan tonight and go back to the drawing board. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Right on time. Thank you. Could we possibly have members not chatting amongst themselves when we've got people speaking? It's, you know, we should show some respect here on both sides. Right, now the next person is Councillor Geraldine Brown.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members. I'm Chairman of Yalding Parish Council, which is just one of the 41 Maidstone parishes which house approximately 50% of our borough's residents. Preparation of this local plan review has taken a huge amount of resource over a long period and aroused strong passions amongst those who have an issue with any of its contents, including location of housing. In fact, I suspect we all have reservations. Our borough has had to absorb a very large number of new homes over the past few years, and because of government mandate, we are obliged to provide yet more over the next 15, particularly the next 5. Would a change of government sometime this year change that? It seems extremely unlikely. That means that our borough must absorb yet more pain in terms of even more new homes, with our infrastructure already lagging behind. In the current local plan, identified sites are widely distributed, placing considerable pressure on many rural areas as well as Maidstone itself. In this review, much emphasis is placed on strategic sites at Heathlands, Lixing and Invicta Barracks. Is that comfortable for everyone? Clearly not. As for infrastructure, would a major drive for sustainable transport alleviate worsening travel problems? Given the funding issues for rural bus services and the unrealistic cycling expectations placed upon those of us who live outside the urban area, we think not for those in the rural areas of the borough. In this local plan review, if this local plan review is not adopted, our borough will cease to have a valid local plan. That would mean that the NPPF's presumption in favour of sustainable development would take effect, and any proposal would be approved unless it conflicts with NPPF policies or adverse impacts outweigh the benefits. We only have to look at Tunbridge and Moorling to see no local plan and developments going ahead where a more considered and widely consulted local plan would not wish to place them. That would happen to our borough if this local plan review is not adopted. The inspector ran an extensive process of consultation and has now issued his 278-page report, including over 100 required main modifications to render the plan sound. While no doubt we all have an issue, large or small, with this document, even after wide consultation and modification, we ask you please to move it to adoption so that our borough retains significant control over what gets developed where and to what standards. And just to let you know that today my clerk has received a phone call from one of the developers of a site that was left out of this review, asking for a meeting to talk to us. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Brown. Now call upon Councillor Cooper to move the recommendations of the Cabinet.
Mr. Mayor, thank you very much once again. We are here this evening not to decide on the spatial strategy for this borough, but to decide whether or not we want a development framework. Council gave a view several years ago to embark on a spatial strategy including garden communities instead of a dispersal strategy. That spatial strategy was agreed in this very room by a decision-making committee, the Strategic Planning and Infrastructure Committee, and was ratified before submission by the full council. The review thus far has been regularly consulted upon, both broadly and technically. The inspector has agreed that, subject to his main modifications, this plan is sound. If we do not adopt this plan tonight, we will lose a whole raft of policies that have been worked on to a high degree by members from across this chamber. Some of them would be a requirement for a greater level of biodiversity net gain for residential development. The NPPF states 10%, this policy states 20%. We would lose green space in our strategic developments, much needed green space for biodiversity and for the general public. We would lose the main modifications, which the inspector believes makes this plan sound and is for the betterment of that development. We would immediately be without a 5-year housing land supply, which would bring us to the NPPF's standard of presumption in favour of sustainable development. It is likely that the large strategic developments would go ahead regardless if we don't have a plan, but there will be no supplementary planning documents which will provide the greater policies and the framework to work with existing communities. We would be solely reliant on Section 106 and the Community Infrastructure Levy which in many regards, particularly where the town centre is concerned, is out of date. We would not get the infrastructure that we require. We would be in a much worse position. The number of houses would increase from the current 1,157, which is averaged off over the course of the plan, to 1,226 units per annum immediately. Moving the recommendation, Mr. Mayor, I just want to remind members that there is a second recommendation which is sought within this agenda item, and that is for officers to double check that all of the changes required by the inspector have been accurately included in the local plan review and the policies map, and that final versions of these documents are presented to an appropriate and accurate standard. The second recommendation would delegate authority to the Head of Spatial Planning and Economic Development to ensure this important work is carried out. Therefore, after the meeting of Cabinet last night, I move 1. That the Maidstone Borough Council Local Plan Review 2021 to 2038 at Appendix D to the Report of Cabinet held on the 19th of March 2024, which incorporates the Inspector's main modifications and policies map at Appendix E to the Report of Cabinet held on the 19th of March 2024, be adopted. And 2. The Head of Spatial Planning and Economic Development be given delegated authority to make any non-material typographical corrections and formatting changes as required. And in so moving, Mr. Mayor, with the permission of colleagues, I would request for this particularly important vote, a named vote. Thank you very much.
Is that seconded? Councillor, do you wish to speak?
I second and I reserve my right, if I may, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Councillor Jeffrey.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Gosh, what a mountain of papers we've had to wade through. A friend said, read it all as the devil's in the detail, and I think I may have found all 9 circles of hell in there. I do believe the plan is fundamentally wrong. Large-scale development on much-needed farmland with no accompanying infrastructure cannot be right. The infrastructure plan has just 3% funding identified. There's no sustainable transport plan, no design and sustainability development plan document, no gypsy and traveller DPT. There's no town sector strategy. It does seem that there's no strategy other than to build large, unsustainable and unconnected houses on farmland. And for the same reasons that we are against Lindsay and Heathlands, we're against seeing 2,000 houses built in Marden as well. So I don't want to hear others claiming that we're in favour of that. Then yesterday we had the KCC letter,